From Maine to Georgia, from New York west to Iowa and beyond, most Americans still live on farms and small towns when the 20th century began. The new farm machinery and the tractor introduced in 1902 would revolutionize farming. For those who lived further west, on the frontier in Texas, Utah, Wyoming, and Montana, life was even more difficult. The railroads were bringing the 20th century to the isolated communities of the frontier. But many Americans lived far from the rail lines in 1900 and remained isolated from the rest of the country. In the log camps of the Pacific Northwest, the rivers were the highways to civilization. And prospectors wandered the hills, hoping to strike it rich. The American West in 1900 was still a land of cowboys. Indians were living on reservations. Cattle ranching was big business. Rodeos and the traveling Wild West shows were powerful legacies of the western frontier passed on to the 20th century. In 1900, Buffalo Bill was still traveling the country with Annie Oakley and Sitting Bull, all legends in their own lifetime. Perhaps nothing did more to bring the 20th century to the farm and frontier than the wish books, the mail-order catalogs of Sears Roebuck and Montgomery Ward. In 1901, the Sears catalog cost 50 cents. Valued customers got them free. Rural families called it the Farmer's Bible and kept it in the kitchen. It was even used in schools to teach reading and arithmetic. You could buy everything, kitchen gadgets to imported palms. You could even buy a house by mail. By 1907, Sears was printing 3 million catalogs a year, selling everything you needed from birth to death. All merchandise was guaranteed. All sales were cash. The introduction of rural free delivery in 1896 gave a tremendous boost to the mail-order business. It meant that every farmer's doorstep was now a highway to the world. And new machinery was speeding delivery of letters as well. Every year, mailmen delivered billions of magazines and newspapers to homes across the country. The 20th century meant change, especially in the cities. New York was the fastest growing city. It was also the center of America's high society. The richest families, like the Vanderbilts, all had homes there. New York society was called the 400. Mrs. Astor's ballroom only held 400. Everything they did was news. Many spent summers in Newport and winters in Palm Beach, with servants to take care of every need. For those not quite as rich, who couldn't afford to own a winter home in Florida, there were new luxury hotels that Henry Flagler built along his new rail line from St. Augustine to Key West, providing comfort for the well-to-do. The wealth of some was fabulous, like Mrs. John McLean. Her husband owned newspapers. She owned the Hope Diamond and led a life of luxury and leisure.